Hey, what's going on, guys? Battle Nations Emperor back today with another video, and today, guys, we have the long-awaited boss strikes video. I've been researching a good little bit for this one. Wanted this one to be really good, and I'm glad to have a lot of information on it. There was a total of 21 boss strikes, and they kind of got progressively worse as they went on, with the last one kind of being just a giveaway to the fan base. Every single tier was an airplane, 1 through 10. And all the way up to, I think, tier 10. After that, they just gave you, like, several of the plane. And then right after that final boss strike, they did the unlimited nanopods, and the old Battle Nations went down. But that's all behind us. Today, we have the first 5 boss strikes for you, gentlemen. This is the 1 through 5 boss strikes. You have all of their covers right here. These first boss strikes were all amazing and incredible, had a unique design, character feel, and were truly landmarks within what would become boss strikes. And I think I speak for a lot of us when I say boss strikes were one of the best parts of old Battle Nations. So for anybody new here, let's jump right into what boss strikes are. So what is a boss strike? Boss strikes are monthly events where you, along with your guilds, fight enemies in waves of 4 to 5. I say 4 to 5 because normally it would be 5, but in some boss strikes there were 4. For the rest of this video, we're just going to say 5, but just know that wasn't the case for all of them. And in these 5 waves, you would win boss points to earn resources and exclusive units. Now, you didn't have to defeat every single wave, nor did you actually have to complete a wave to earn boss points. You earn boss points for every single enemy unit you killed in a boss strike. So for every single unit you kill of the wave, and of course if you clear out the wave, you can just walk away, with all units, fine. But you basically go against 5 waves of enemies, continuously attacking you, continuously attacking them, until you clear all 5 waves or the enemies hospitalize all of your units. Going into the next thing going into our next point, we have prizes rewarded on a tier-based system, as I alluded to earlier, 1 to 10. Tier 1 was the first one. It normally was something very simple, like basic building resources for campaign buildings or something within your base. Nothing too crazy. And then it went all the way to tier 10. Tier 10 was normally some extremely powerful, some extremely cool, awesome aircraft / plane. Normally completely new. Sometimes it was ripped out of the campaign, but normally it was just a completely brand new aircraft. Super cool idea, and it added a lot of life to the game. It was a huge drive to get to tier 10. You could go past tier 10. There was a tier 11 and 12, which doubled the requirement for tier 10 and was just a repeat of tier 10. So you could theoretically get multiple tier 10s, but it was extremely rare to find somebody to do it. So if you ever saw somebody with 2 tier 10s immediately after that tier 10 got released, you knew they were an extremely good player. These exclusive units, as I alluded to earlier, were normally planes. They sometimes were something else, but almost always they were planes or some other version of an aircraft. There were 3 planes per boss strike normally, and those planes were spread out among tier 3, tier 7, and tier 10 respectively, with the weakest being tier 3, tier 7 being the medium, and tier 10 being the strongest. Boss points were primarily earned through fighting the waves, as discussed earlier. However, you could also earn boss points through earning a particular resource. So for boss strike 1, it could be lumber. For boss strike 2, it could be concrete, so on and so forth. And it could be anything from lumber, concrete, oil, and various other resources. So in-game resources could be donated to get some boss points. But it is important to know, while you could donate to get boss points, the number one primary way to get boss points was through fighting waves in boss strikes. Almost all boss strikes included new exclusive units. The only reason it's almost is near the end of the game, they did start recycling some of the planes. Even earlier on, they started recycling just a few tiers. Later on, it would get more aggressive, as in some of the later boss strikes, we wouldn't have new units at all. But for the first few boss strikes, while boss strikes were still in their prime, pretty much all 3 new aircraft would be new, completely brand new aircraft with cool new features, cool new attacks, and a cool new set design. And finally, I just wanted to throw this in here because I thought it was a fun fact. Boss strikes can technically be soloed, so were not required to join a guild to fight in a boss strike, which I thought was kind of funny. And you could technically continue the tiers by yourself. Now, it's so obscure and such a bad idea that I literally could not find images on the wiki of anybody doing it, nor could I find footage of anybody attempting it. So I think it was just a simple case of Z2 developers thinking to themselves, well, nobody's going to try it. And then simply enough, maybe in the wiki somebody was like, oh, you can technically do it. So I don't think this was a thing most people did, thankfully. I just thought it was a fun little tidbit that the Ball Strike wiki included that could be soloed. And you can see a boss strike, you can see a boss strike looked primarily like this. This is the first boss strike, Lieutenant Duran's boss strike. This was the layout of what it looked like. You can see the bottom right there, bottom right, we have fight, and then to its left we have donate, and this one it was lumber. And speaking of Lieutenant Duran's boss strike, let's jump right into his boss strike as he was the first Lieutenant Duran. Now, fun fact, this is the menu screen on his boss strike on the Battle Nations wiki. Its full official name is 2nd Lieutenant Duran's Assault, and as a child I always read that as Lieutenant Duran's 2nd Assault, and I always thought, what was the first? And not only that, I also wondered to myself, man, this Lieutenant Duran guy seems like a pretty powerful dude. He is introduced in this boss strike. I mean, we have the boss strike PowerPoints right here. We can read the very first one right here. The very first boss strike in history, introducing and led by Rebel strategist Lieutenant Duran. Now, I love boss strikes. They were a great factor. Again, I genuinely think they were one of the best aspects of the game. But out of all the things I think could be improved, I hope we get a little bit of character development for the future leaders of boss strikes, whoever they are. And they can even be like people from the campaign. They don't have to be brand new people. I just always thought it was crazy the fact that you had, boss strikes like this one, and pretty much every boss strike after this one, where they would make a completely brand new original character, put good design into them, make them look super cool, all this stuff, and give them zero story, like literally nothing. The only thing we know about Lieutenant Duran is the fact that he looks like this, and he is a leader of the rebellion army. He is a lieutenant in the rebel army. That's it. He is introduced during this boss strike. He is never discussed again, and that's pretty much the case for all boss strike leaders, which is something I hope that in future boss strikes we won't have to deal with. Again, it's not confirmed by Mad Rona Games that they're going to be bringing back boss strikes, but considering how big of an aspect boss strikes are, I would be shocked if they did not bring them back later on, at least. I could understand if we don't immediately have boss strikes back, but I'd be shocked if they just never came back. But one thing I do hope they change about it is I hope they give these characters, these leading figures, a little bit more character development. Going a little bit more into the first boss strike, we see it was considered one of the best and hardest boss strikes in history. All of the units were pretty much just Imperial units, so tank destroyers, mega tanks, all of your own units, just, again, because this is the Rebellion. This is pretty much just the breakaway part of the Empire, so it's going to be all of your units, the campaign standard units, against you. Unfortunately, I could not find very much information about it on the wiki, and the YouTube is beyond barren. I could not find any videos about the first boss strike. Boss strikes 2 through 21, I think everybody kind of understood what it was. It was going to be a monthly thing and how important it was going to be with these units. But I genuinely think the first boss strike, everybody kind of thought this was going to be a one-off thing, so they didn't put too much attention to it. So very hard to learn off the bat for the community, and a lot of them just did not document it. They didn't take pictures. They didn't even put a few videos up on YouTube. So very sparse on information for it. Not only considered one of the hardest, but genuinely one of the hardest to get the prizes in. So much so that the community, the developers themselves, Z2 had to step in and give the community 2 massive benefits to try to help them get these planes and help them get into the main player base. The first was a major reduction for the boss points needed to get from tier 8 to tier 10, a massive reduction given. I couldn't find what the reduction was, but given how it's talked about in various different wikis, from the boss strike wiki itself covering boss strikes to boss strike 1, it sounds like it's somewhere between 30 to 50%. It sounds like a massive reduction. So again, some kind of big reduction given from the points necessary to go from tier 8 to tier 10, making tier 10 a lot more achievable to other people. So a big win for the community at large, so I guess, except for people who already had tier 10. But I guess then the question there is to go push for tier 11 if you're in that position. And then the second massive event given to community was on the weekend. They gave a multiplier of all boss strike points, a 5x. So just pull up the promo here real quick. You had a 5x multiplier on the final week of boss strike 1 turn. 5x boss strike points. So no matter how weak or how unprepared your gang was, or your guild was, you guys could probably rally together that last weekend and push to tier 3 if you had nothing. Push all the way to tier 7 if you had just been stuck between, tier 5, tier 3. Or even if you guys were at tier 7 and you're coordinated enough, everybody pushed this final weekend and we can all get tier 10. So very nice element to see them throw in there for the first boss strike, especially when it appeared to be a little bit harder than everybody had initially intended. As I showed here through sliding through, this was the promo unit for the boss strike, the first boss strike. This was the AA Flanker. This is his promo art. The anti-aircraft flank gun is essential for calculated, accurate attacks against enemy aircraft. Trainable for a limited time for 40 nanopods. So quite funny that the literal first promo unit for boss strikes would be an anti-air unit specifically designed for taking them down. Extremely fitting for the future history of all boss strikes. And finally, the last thing we have about this is I just wanted to point out that the Maverick plane, the tier 10 for this boss strike, was an S tier trophy for the longest period. So this was the Wasp, this was the tier 3. This is the Cobra helicopter, this was the tier 7. And this was the tier 10 for the very first ever boss strike. This was the Maverick. The Maverick was quite possibly one of the greatest planes to exist in boss strike, not even for its strength, which it was a relatively strong aircraft, just simply for the factor that if you had this plane for the longest time, it was the greatest trophy ever. It is what plasma mammoths are going to be in the new Battle Nations for the old Battle Nations, if you will. So it was an amazing trophy. Beautiful. Unfortunately, they would bring it back in a later boss strike, which would make vets of the first boss strike extremely mad, rightfully so. But I am glad to hear that for that first little period before they reintroduced the Maverick, they had an incredible trophy that they rightfully earned and deserved. This beautiful Maverick plane right here. So that should just about cover the first boss strike. Jumping right into the second one, we have Shaman Kuros boss strike. I hope I'm saying that second name, Shrews. The Battle of Shaman, the second boss strike ever, here's its stats. And jumping right into the information we know about it, it's the second boss strike in history. It was led by Raider Shaman Kuros. So while the first one was led by a rebel strategist, somebody who broke away from the Empire and is going on to lead a rebellion, basically succeeded from the Union, if you will. These guys are raiders. This is, scavengers. These are just bandits, criminals, if you will. So the last one was pretty much just your own units against you. This would be a boss strike of wave after wave of raiders. So, the war mammoths, the raiders with the guns, the muskets, basic Battle Nation raider stuff. Fun fact about this boss strike, it was the last boss strike to use 3x3 formations. So before this, some ways would give you just 3x3 formations, but due to how much weaker they made this one, I mean, they literally had mega tanks and tank killers in the first one, and in this one, some of them were literally just random bandits. They did have to, unfortunately, get rid of the 3x3 formation because it was too weak. So this was the last boss strike formation where you'd ever see a 3x3 formation on the enemy side, where basically, they just have 9 units total, 3 up front and then 3, or 2 behind them. This also would establish a clear theme for all future going boss strikes, as the community would rally behind this kind of raider rebellion, if you will. The first one was kind of all over the place. Even though it was an imperial rebellion, it was still questioning what was, the meaning behind it. Again, since we had never heard of Lieutenant Duran, it was kind of the question of what this was. After this, after Boss Strike 2, with the theme of the Raiders, it was decided that every boss strike going forward would have a strong, defined theme. So something it's surrounded, an idea behind it, basically, and somebody leading, of course, who would always be a new character, rarely given a backstory, if ever. The promotional unit for this boss strike was a Wasp Striker for 60 nanopods. The 3 airplanes can be seen right here, of course, our good old Hurricane. The ZR, or the German Zeppelin, if you will, incendiary based. And then finally, we have, is that the LT? My apologies, my notes got messed up here. My IRL notes, not my screen notes. And then, as we were discussing, the Strike Wasper. This was an extremely powerful unit, you can see right here. Floyd and the Spider Wasp have never seen eye to eye, but they will when you tame them this weekend. Visit your animal trainer today. A fairly powerful unit when it initially came out, especially for a critter. I don't think it would be relatively too highly regarded. I mean, it was definitely a cool trophy and a cool unit, especially if you liked animals. But it would get, of course, brought back in secret vaults. A lot of people would be upset about that. But nevertheless, cool unit for the time. And then finally, the last point of contention here for this boss strike that I'd like to bring up is that the waves were redesigned in matchmaking to allow them to, or in short, the point system was redesigned and introduced to allow matchmaking to the individual level. So for this, before this in boss strikes 1 and 2, it was every 10 levels. After this, it would not only be per level, but you would also be earning boss points per your level. So it would basically just become a lot more customized. Again, you could tell these were the first two, as they're still redesigning the 3x3 formations, they're still trying to figure out the themes, and they're still redesigning the point system. All completely understandable within the first two boss strikes. We have these nice grade 3 planes. We have the good spider wasp right here. Was a great boss strike overall, but they really start hitting their strides in the third boss strike. This is just some more promotional material for the second. I'd just like to give it a second for anybody who would like to pause and look at it. Again, they gave no story to these characters, but they designed them beautifully. This was the Raider Recruit. This would be for the third boss strike. My photos got messed up. Apologize about that. And this would be the third boss strike. This would be Raider Shroman's boss strike. You can see our information right here. Civil Wolf faction, October 13th. And the donation resource was oil. And jump right into the promotional unit, since it was right before it. It was the Raider Recruit for 85 nanopods. He was a relatively strong unit. Nothing crazy with these promotional units. None of them were too crazy overpowered, except one at the boss strike 5, which we'll get into at the end of this video. But a fairly medium powerful unit. Definitely want to pick one up just to have it for the limited time edition. And let's jump right into boss strike 3. So boss strike 3 introduced us to the first and only female lead of the Silver Wolf Pack. Enforcer Shrow. I keep calling her Raider Shrow, even though she's not a Raider. She's a Wolfpack leader. Shrow, Enforcer Shrow. She not only was the first female in the Wolfpack, but also she was the only one to not be given a story. Which again, I want to make sure, not to be clear, just be clear, it's not saying that because she was a woman, but simply for the factor of she was the only female lead given through the boss strike, and she has no story. And pretty much every single other Wolfpack doesn't have a story. So if there was any character to not give a story, it would actually make sense to not give to her. I just find it funny, though, that she's often considered one of the coolest boss strike leaders, yet she's also within a faction that in and of itself doesn't give away more information. She was the first boss strike to reuse an airplane, the Slopwith, the airplane right here, except notably its tier was switched out from, in boss strike 1 it was a tier 3, and this boss strike it would be a tier 7. This was the first boss strike to reuse an airplane. Another interesting note of fact is the Silver Wolf waves were designed to cause more player casualties. Z2 kind of realized the ideal strategy to go into any boss strike at this point was to not actually go in and, fight wave after wave with your best army and then slowly whittle it down until you have your worst units, send them out there, they all die, and then you just wait to heal everybody up in the hospital. That was the intended way to play, but what people started doing, and what Z2 found out, is that people would make literally unbeatable forces, armies that could not be destroyed by any conceivable wave given by the enemy. So you would go in there with your 9 strongest units, wipe an entire wave, and well, you didn't lose any units. You can go immediately right back in there, and as long as you're, lucky enough / perfect enough, you can endlessly grind that out for unlimited boss points. So starting at boss strike 3 and going forward, we would see the waves literally be designed to take out player units. This might seem like a mean thing on the dev part, but it completely makes sense, as they don't want anybody sitting there endlessly grinding out waves. And also, it's supposed to be a challenge, so completely understandable. And honestly, I thought it was more fun, because with the first two boss strikes, first one, everybody's just trying to figure out. Second one, it's Raiders. It's completely easy to chew through. The third one, some of those Silver Wolf units, they could get strong. I mean, one of them was literally just a garbage truck with a rocket in it, so they got pretty insane pretty quickly. So completely understandable for them wanting to buff up the strength of these boss strikes. As we already discussed, the promotional unit was the Raider Recruiter, as we discussed earlier, for 60 nanopods. And finally, last thing of note about this boss strike was the Z2 Bomber was included as the grand prize, setting the future expectations that all tier 10 units had to be cool and impressive and genuinely awesome. Because, I mean, the first two tier 10s, while not bad in their own right, were arguably medium to strong units. Nobody would consider them wow. But when this bad boy came out, this gentleman right here, the Z2 Bomber, this guy was amazing. He was awesome. He looked cool. He is literally just a World War II bomber. And it was amazing. Of course, it's named after Z2. Z2 obviously isn't going to make a plane named after themselves and then not make it extremely overpowered and awesome. But just wanted to throw that in there because if you got tier 10 in this boss strike 3, and you got this bad boy, you were basically the kid on the block who owned a Charizard. I mean, that was the situation you were in. And if you could plow through PvP, you could go into campaign and just steamroll through it. But most importantly, you could just show it off to your friends and look super cool. So set the bar extremely high going forward, that all tier 10s had to be set to impress. And if they were anything less than it, it would be considered a disappointment. Here's some promotional material for her. Again, no story given to her, just like everybody else. And in fact, since she was a Silver Wolf, we have even less context to her than everybody else. But nevertheless, she was given a flawless design. Impeccable. Moving on to Boss Strike 4, probably one of the best boss strikes ever. In my opinion, the best boss strike ever, and that's a personal opinion, let me make that absolutely clear. But a lot of people would agree with that. You can ask that within the community. You find a lot of YouTube videos, people talking about it being the best. I get a big smile on my face when I watch people playing this boss strike, and they literally call it the best boss strike in time. I wish I could go back in time and tell them over a decade later, I'm still agreeing with them. So let's jump right into Boss Strike 4. Here are the stats of it. Take a nice little overview from the wiki. And here are our bullet points. Boss Strike 4, Infected Troopers. This introduced the Infected, led by nobody in particular, not a leader, but was rather just a zombie outbreak, so general zombie story. This was the first boss strike to replace all limited edition planes with all brand new limited edition themed infected units. So not only were you fighting these brand new, powerful, cool zombie units, if you were good enough in the boss strike, you could earn some of them for your own team, which was awesome. Widely considered, as I preluded to when introducing them, widely considered one of the best and coolest boss strikes in all of Battle Nation's history. And I think if you had anything to do with this boss strike, you love boss strikes. I mean, I find that to be pretty much the bar. People who would come after this boss strike genuinely would. Could love Battle Nations, could be better at Battle Nations than me, could all this stuff. But to have a, understanding and appreciation of boss strikes, if you were here, you know what I'm talking about. If you were here type of thing. But Boss Strike 4 was an absolutely amazing boss strike. This was the one boss strike I was very happy to see repeat. For Halloween the next year, they would bring back the Infected, and I think I speak for a lot of players here, not all of them, but for a lot of players here, when I say I am glad this one got repeated. If there was any boss strike that they should repeat with any repeat units and any repeat theme, it should have been this one right here, and I'm glad they did, because this one was deserved to be repeated. The promotional unit for this one, for this zombie-themed event, was of course just a straight-up zombie hunter. This is what he looked like, and this was his promotional material. The zombie hunter is incredibly effective against powerful infected enemies. You can higher your level, the faster you can rank up your zombie hunter. Now in your barracks, and he was for 60 nanopods. And the 3 zombies you could get through this boss strike were, of course, the Apex Bullfrog, the Striker, and of course, last but certainly not least, the Apex Infected. which, if you had him, I don't think anything really challenged you in the game anymore. This was also, one last thing, the only, because I say first boss strike, but I also think it was the only boss strike to award 4 limited edition units instead of 3. So there were 4. There was the Apex Frog, this striker right here, and then the Apex again, except while this one was the tier 8, there was a smaller, slightly weaker version of this at tier 8. So you would immediately go from tier 7 right here at the striker to competing for a weaker version of this, tier 9, which was some resources, and then tier 10, which was this bad boy. So they truly went all out with Boss Strike 4, the original Infected. It truly defined Boss Strikes as one of the coolest aspects of the game. You can see all the 3 right here. Rally your guildmates to acquire these exclusive Infected units. The Apex Colossal, the Apex Stalker, and the Apex Bullfrog. All of them right there. And yes, here was the 4th one, because I was unfortunate. I was afraid I hadn't saved a photo, but thankfully I had. Just had it behind here. So again, you would go straight from tier 7 all the way to this gentleman right here, who's just a weaker version of the Apex, and then you'd go straight for the Apex. Without a doubt, one of, if not the best boss strikes in all of Battle Nation's history. Here's some artwork of the striker looking extremely cool. And finally, for today's video, we have boss strike number 5, Yakuza the Raptor Trainer. For a second I wanted to say capturer, but it is trainer. Here's the official wiki overlook of Yakuza and his boss strike number 5. You can see it repeats the Hurricane, Sky Raptor for tier 12, and Wild Boar, and we'll get into that promotional unit in one moment. But first, let's review our bullet points. It was the 5th boss strike, introducing Yakuza, the Raptor Trainer, leading a pack of animals and raiders. So this would be a boss strike all centered around pack animals and raiders. So just a repeat of boss strike 2, except much stronger with pack animals too. Strong pack animals as well. This boss strike, starting with this boss strike, players could no longer leave their guilds once the boss strike had begun, meaning that once the boss strike had begun, you were stuck in that guild for the entire boss strike. The reason this was implemented is because people found out during the previous boss strike, the Halloween boss strike, and how cool all of those units were, and people wanted them so bad. People were literally selling spots for real life cash, spots for other people's guilds, just to get in and quickly claim everything. Of course, Z2 didn't like this concept, not because people paying. I mean, that's a issue in and of itself, but also just the factor of it breaks the rules of the game. It's not cool. So to prevent this, they had to start locking people into their guilds as soon as the boss strike had begun. Of course, kind of sucks for anybody not really caring and just wants to transfer a guild during that month period, but nevertheless a necessary action to take because, well, you didn't need people jumping into guilds and getting rewards they didn't earn. The boss points required to continue up for higher tiers would continue to double for higher tiers after hitting tier 10 with this one, so that would be established. And the promotional unit for this boss strike was none other than the legendary, well, I was going to say legendary, but I also meant that as like a term, not its name, so I would just be saying the word legendary twice, but I'll say mystical. The mystical legendary mammoth. This bad boy, genuinely one of the best units in the game. Here's its promotion with up to 4 attacks. This is our strongest mammoth unit to date. They even said it in the promotional, it was good. Available at your animal trainer during this boss strike only. That's some cap. It would come back for the secret vaults, but secret vaults weren't a thing at this time, so they didn't know. The higher your level, the faster you can rank up your legendary mammoth. A hefty 85 nanopods, but some of the best 85 nanopods you will ever spend in your Battle Nations career for one of the best units in Battle Nations. Just had to give him his own little time because of how cool he was and how powerful he was. And finally, the last note for this boss strike is, due to the game's balancing and due to it being harder to get extras in this boss strike, being that they doubled the requirements for higher tiers, the B10 Wild Boar, along with its cool design and powerful attack patterns, would immediately become one of the fan favorite, not just airplanes, but units in general. It would go on to inspire the Boar 2, which was literally just this bad boy, but with a different paint job. He would have a few different attacks, but it was mainly just this guy, because he was so cool, and they were still trying to keep this one unique. So I do appreciate that they literally just made a second one just to call it the Boar 2, to leave the Boar 1, you know, I guess some kind of trophy elements to it, if you will, if you had earned it during this ball strike. But yeah, they would initially be giving it away again, I think in Ball Strike 21, as one of the 1 tiers where they gave away everybody, you know, an airplane. Whew, that legendary mammoth, though. Besides the wild boar, the strongest aspect of this Ball Strike by far would be this bad boy right here. An absolute beauty. And here is the promotional material for anybody curious. Beautiful designs as always. And that will do it for today's videos, guys. A little bit under the weather, not sick, but have some allergies, just trying to battle through those. Sorry if I was a little bit off this video. This is my 5th recording of it, and I've gotten so close to the ending a few times. I kind of gapped in this video sometimes, thinking I was going to re-record it, but it's like 11 here, so I'm about to pass out. But I just wanted to get you guys this Ball Strike video out because I put a lot of work into it. I have the next 20 lined up, and I can break them up however you guys like. If this was too much, we can start doing 3 to 4 ball strikes per video. If this was too short and you guys want it to be a little longer, a bit quicker, we can make it 6 to 7 ball strikes per video. Again, just whatever you guys want. Or we can keep this format exactly how it is and keep 5 ball strikes per video and get through all of them within about 4 parts. But yeah, guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please consider leaving a like down below. And if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing down below, if, again, you are new. And that will truly do it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a great rest of your day.